Welcome to Haunting Live Podcast, a place where we bring a new paranormal guest each episode to share their journey and experiences.
I noticed before I was a working medium that a lot of mediums, particularly the women, were quite large, and partly that is you're sitting around a lot when you're doing one-to-one work. You're sitting around a lot, you're not getting the exercise. I'm certainly doing that a lot these days. I've put on a lot of weight. And then you're not eating properly, you're on the go a lot, so you're grabbing sandwiches and this, that. And if you've been on a bit of a high with a demonstration, then yeah, it really makes you hungry because of that energy needing to be replaced. So you're tempted to replace your psychic energy with food.
For more Haunting Live real experiences, be sure to follow us on our social, on Instagram, Facebook, and also Blue Sky. And don't forget to also check us out on our official website, HauntingLivePodcast.com.
Are you looking for the hard-to-find item, spiritual item, that your loved one wants to always get, but you don't know where to check out? Why not check us out here underneath HauntingLivePodcast.com. Underneath our store, though, we actually have tons of items, from dream catchers, crystals, so many more for you. Check us out underneath HauntingLivePodcast.com.
Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Log in underneath Podbean and Facebook Live with Divine Oracle Podcast and Haunting Live. Trevor from Haunting Live will be doing chat with you guys, while Brother Chris from Divine Oracle Podcast will be offering soul coaching cards. Reach out and listen live. You never know what the spirits want you to know.
Hey, Haunting Live fans, it's your girl Yolanta Meri, and as always, I have brought you another amazing guest. Today, we'll be speaking with a psychic medium with decades of paranormal experiences. Not only that, but she can help you read tarot like a star. It is none other than British psychic medium Gail Hart. Welcome to the show, Gail.
What a lovely introduction. I'm coming again. That sounds fantastic. Even I'm liking the sound of me. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
And I am really excited to hear about all of the different things that you do. You've got so much paranormal experiences, but then you have like this bevy of experience as a psychic medium. You do tarot, you do palmistry. These are things that are really interesting to me. I'm just starting to learn tarot. It is freaking hard.
I don't think it crossed my mind how hard it is. When I first started, I just got stuck into it. And I think I approach a lot of things in life like that. Oh, let's just do it. And if you're interested in astrology, I've got Sagittarius rising, which explains a lot, where I just go for it. I don't really think it through. And then my sun sign is, I'm on the cusp of Cancer and Leo, so I'm quite flamboyant at times. I'm a shy flamboyant. I like to wear the feather boas, but I hide in the cupboard with them. And then my moon is in Capricorn, so I've got this common sense side as well, so it kind of pulls the Sagittarian wildness slightly back and says, are you sure you want to do that? And I think when I first learnt tarot, I didn't really know what it was. I'd heard it. I'd been reading magazines, and particularly my sister's teen magazines, and I used to go to the library and get books on the paranormal. I really like reading about the unexplained, the world of the unexplained. Do you remember Arthur C. Clarke? I don't know.
Oh my goodness, yes.
That's going back to the 1970s. That's showing my age. And so I was really always interested in what's not there, or what is seemingly not there. And then they mentioned, I got into fortune telling. I read my first palms at 12 years old. And then tarot, these books were referenced. I thought, what's tarot? What's that? It's not something it depends who your family is, but it's not something you tend to see in your auntie's parlour, is it? Well, you might in my family, but I don't know about most families. So I was like, well, what is tarot? And then, how these things happen, these series of coincidences. The minute I thought, what is tarot? A tarot deck appeared. Well, that
Yeah.
makes it sound like one just appeared on my table in front of me. That would have been impressive. But what actually happened was I was being nosy. My sister had gone to university, and I thought, well, I'll have a look in her room because if she'd have been there, she wouldn't have let me. She was very
Of course
territorial.
not.
And as I walked into my sister's room, there was a tarot deck staring at me, and I'm like, aha, the elusive, mysterious tarot. What is this? And I picked it up, and I, shame to say, I snaffled it. I took it for my own. I did own up to my sister, and I did replace the deck eventually.
Well, I mean, they do say that tarot, you're not supposed to buy your first deck. It's supposed to be
Absolutely.
gifted. I guess it was gifted.
And you know, if depending on what books you read, I also read the gifted or stolen. Now, I'm not encouraging people to go out there stealing things.
Except if it's your sister's.
I got stole my sister's tarot deck. So it was really weird how, and I think, synchronicity, isn't it? You think it and then you discover it. And when I first started looking at the deck, there was the little booklet that everyone gets with it, which when you start looking at it, you go, oh, I don't know if I really understand this. The card that really tripped me up was the Temperance card. So I was like 19 when I first got my first tarot deck. I was very wild. I was a punk rocker, later on I started riding motorbikes and all sorts of stuff. And I was like, what on earth is temperance? And it's to calm things down, to temper things. I was like, what is that? So it'd come up in readings like, oh, no idea what that is. So I'd skip over it. And then people would say, well, what's that card then, Gail? I was like, oh, don't worry about that one. Look at this one over here. So
That's the Sagittarius rising right there.
I know. I got away with it. But use your creativity I teach tarot now, and I always say to people, have fun with it. I think it's a tool of entertainment. It is a lovely system. You can take yourself too seriously. I try not to take myself too seriously. And, you can get caught up into the mysticism and the symbolism. And for example, the Fool card where it's got the dog. Do you remember the Fool with the dog? In some decks, if you're looking at the Rider-Waite, for example, there'll be a little white dog barking at his heels.
Yeah.
And not in all decks, because there's a lot of variations. But sometimes you'll look at it and go, have you got a white dog? It's as simple as that. And the person will go, yeah, I have actually. So we can learn all the occult meanings and the mysticisms you like, but sometimes it's slapping you bare in the face and just going, yeah, I'm just about to get a new dog.
So there's that whole intuitive aspect. So you can either look at it and read it as the booklet would say, or it actually helps pull that intuition out of the reader.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a really good point to make, because certainly when I started my tarot journey, I didn't think I was psychic. I was, I'd had all these paranormal experiences, but I didn't consider myself psychic. I mean, our doors used to open on their own at home, and we never saw that as a paranormal. We saw that as a normal thing. It was never a paranormal. This is part of our everyday life. Our doors always open and close on their own, we always see shadows walking up the stairs. I never thought of it as paranormal. I just thought, oh, just happens to everyone. But yeah, I didn't call myself psychic for a very long time, because if you're not psychic, or you don't consider yourself psychic, you can learn tarot as a tool. You can learn the symbolisms. You can learn each card's meaning, the placement. And I'm not a mathematician, but one of my friends recently said there's thousands and thousands of combinations if you really studied the tarot with the different placements and all the rest of it. And how are you going to memorize thousands and thousands of combinations? You don't do it consciously. But eventually I found, as you will, Yolanta, is that stuff was coming that wasn't related to the cards. It wasn't a code book, textbook meaning, and stuff was coming. I remember the first time that happened was probably about 30. So I'd been reading on and off for about 10 years by then, just over 10 years. And I remember I had this little unit in a place in Euston in London, and suddenly I could see the letter H in my mind's eye. And I just said to the person, I'm not sure why, but I'm being shown the letter H, or H, however you pronounce it. And they just looked at me amazed and said, "That's our friend who's just passed away. He was known as H." And I
No.
said, and then I went from that. I said, and I'm also being shown a bicycle. And so my clairvoyance opened up because I was focusing on the card in a way, treating it a bit like a crystal ball where you're kind of gazing and just allowing things to unfold. So that's when I realized actually there's a bit more to this. There's no H in the tarot cards unless you're reading the Hierophant, but you know what's going on. And it started happening more and more that names were coming to me, descriptions. I describe myself as, what's my profession? Well, I daydream for other people. That's how I describe myself. So
Oh,
that's
that's beautiful.
clairvoyance. I'm daydreaming for you. So I say, whatever comes when I'm sat with somebody, I empty myself. I take myself out of the equation. Whatever's going on in my life, I could have had the most disastrous day. Quite often it is, you know, with the Sagittarius rising. So yeah, life's never dull. But I take myself out of the way, and all the really best mediums I've ever met do that, so that you become a clear channel for inspiration. Let's just say inspiration. You might call it spirit, you might call it inspiration. So you become a vessel for inspiration. And through that inspiration, you start to see and feel things. And the real gift is trusting it. That's the real challenge, because we all daydream, don't we? You know,
We do.
I think most of us do. And it's the point of recognizing, hang on a minute, I wasn't thinking of that a minute ago. Where did that come from? Is that coming externally from, whether you call it spirit, the guides, or is that me? Was I just thinking about what I'm having for dinner? So now I'm thinking about food. You know, that is obvious, isn't it? I'm hungry, I'm going to think about food. But if you're hungry and you're thinking about food, but suddenly you start thinking about going to Africa, you know, then where did that come from? So, yeah, it's an interesting subject.
And really, this is like when you fall into like a flow state where you're just no mind, you're doing in a
Yeah.
gentle flow. I think a lot of people go into that state. Maybe they're jogging, maybe they're doing dishes or vacuuming, maybe they're tending to their garden, and then they have these what they think are daydreams. But as you know, as a psychic medium, this is actually cloaked information that appears as a daydream. So, you know, if you're listening and you've had something that appears as a daydream that just shows up, and then it shows up in your waking life, then, you know, you're experiencing exactly what Gail is experiencing when she goes into the state with the tarot, which is wildly cool.
It's a really good point, and you've explained it really beautifully, Yolanta. I really like that. And oh, my mind's gone blank now. I tend to zone out quite a lot. You know? But exactly that meditative state. And one of the things I do is channeling and trance. I'm developing as a medium, and I'm developing as a trance medium. You never stop developing. I'm very cynical of anyone who calls themselves a master of anything, because you just never stop learning.
No, never.
Yeah.
So how does I want to know personally, how does trance mediumship feel compared to doing just maybe like an evidential mediumship session?
Sure. There's a thin line between the two, really, because once you channel spirits, when you're channeling spirit, it's coming straight through you. You are the vessel, you are the channel, which most mediums would say that is how they work anyway. When the idea, I've not mastered it, the idea of mediumship is to say I would still be, oh, I'm Gail, I'm Gail, and I've got your long lost cousin from Arizona or wherever, and he looked like this. So that would be evidential mediumship. The name of the person, the age, whatever information you can get to describe that person, but you would still be you. You'd say I'm they'll be outside of you, for example. Sometimes there is a merging. That's why there's a thin line between it, where I will feel my hands. I did this the other day. My hand was on my hip. Do you remember that children's nursery rhyme, I'm a little teapot? I said, I'm half a teapot. I've got my handle. I've got no spout. But this person used to stand there like half a teapot. And so you kind of are aware that the spirit is trying to manipulate your body to mimic them. And that's a little bit trance, that's a little bit evidential. But trance is more where you really step out of yourself. You're no longer Gail or Yolanta or whoever, because you're allowing the spirit to come straight into you, and to, in a way, it's like a possession, but it's a controlled possession. So the spirit comes in to move your arms, to speak for your transfiguration, for example, is when your face changes and your face takes on the characteristics of the spirit that's deceased. So you can physically see them, which is something I'm learning to do. I haven't mastered it at all, but I've seen it done. I've seen it. It can absolutely blow your mind. It's a very, very rare skill. Yeah.
Yes. That's I've heard of the transfiguration. I've never seen it. You're right. I'm in Canada. I really haven't heard of too many people that do that.
Yeah.
Here.
It's very rare. If I don't know a lot about Canada, unfortunately, but in the UK we have a college. We have various colleges. We've got the College of Psychic Studies, and we've got the Arthur Findlay College up in Stansted, which isn't actually too far from me, but I've actually never been. But it is a train that both places. I've not been to the College of Psychic Studies either, but they are training places where you can go and develop in a safe space, because a lot of people are drawn to developing as mediums and psychics, but a bit like driving, if you say, Gail, would you teach me to drive? The first thing I'd do is show you where the seatbelt is. Then I'd show you where the brake is, because there's no way I'm going to let you drive me into a brick wall. That's the first thing we're going to do. So if you're looking into that, developing as a psychic or a medium, you need to know where your brakes are. You need to know where your safety belt is. And you need to know that you can stop and get out of that car if you're overwhelmed and if you're not ready for it. And we don't get into a car and drive at 100 miles an hour the wrong way down a motorway. We just wouldn't do that.
No.
So it's advisable not to allow yourself to develop at a rate you're not ready for, or with people who are not putting in your welfare and your well-being at first. So if you're with somebody who's teaching you and they may be pushing you a bit too hard, and you need to stop and you need to rest, there's a really good trance medium in the UK called Scott Milligan, who I've had the pleasure of being in his workshops. He's an amazing, lovely, lovely guy. And he's based in Sussex. And he says when he's gone into the trance room, usually you'd have a dedicated space. So the energy builds, and that space ideally is not used for any other type of psychic work. It's purely for trance. So the energy stays there and can build there. The guides are familiar with it. The spirits know where to come. He would have a bottle of, don't quote me on this, but I think it was a fluid with like your electrolytes in it. And he
Okay.
said even though he wouldn't drink it, the it was used to keep the psychic body. It's like it was used like a topping up a battery, you know. So it was he was looking after his well-being. Let me put it that way. And if you go into working with spirits and trance, and as I know, a lot of paranormal investigators are very interested in the spirit world, then what I've heard from both sides, from trance mediums or mediums and from paranormal people, is that things like batteries on phones will drain really quickly. The spirits will use that. Is that correct? From a paranormal
Yes.
point of view? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the spirits need the energy from something. And if they're not getting it from the electricity or the batteries around, they're going to get it from you. So you have to be very strong to do that kind of work, you know. And I don't know if, I mean, I could easily interview you because I would be fascinated in your experiences on the investigations as to, you know, I've seen people on videos become kind of pass out, you know, that when there's a lot of spirit activity around, you know. So it's not for the faint-hearted.
No, so here in North America, it's often referred to as when you do mediumship, you kind of like raise your vibration. So it's kind
Yeah,
of like you pull yourself upwards, and then
yeah,
spirit brings themselves down, and there's some sort of meeting
yeah.
in the middle there. And I have heard, and when the meeting ends, you can kind of feel that heavy drop. And it can be tiring when you're not used to dropping, or maybe if you're kind of used to being maybe a little grouchier in your day-to-day life. That's why a lot of mediums tend to be more neutral, I find, if not a little bit on the happier side of the spectrum, just to make that blending, that medium, that meeting a little bit of a smoother transition when they come back to the real world. But I've also heard that it can be very physically depleting. I've interviewed a different British medium, and he says he takes multivitamins, and he
Yeah.
takes B vitamins because, like, it is physically depleting to do
Oh,
medium
that's
work.
just living in Britain. We've got no sunshine.
Okay,
We're
fair
all
enough.
depleted. No, of course I'm joking, but that makes total sense. And I did used to be, when I was just a psychic. You know, it's like there's a hierarchy, isn't it? I'm on the ladder down here as a psychic, and the mediums are up there. You know, that's me kind of putting the cat amongst the pigeons there. But I noticed before I was a working medium that a lot of mediums, particularly the women, were quite large. And partly that is you're sitting around a lot when you're doing one-to-one work. You're sitting around a lot. You're not getting the exercise. I'm certainly doing that a lot these days. I've put on a lot of weight. And then you're not eating properly, you know, you're on the go a lot, so you're grabbing sandwiches and this, that. And if you've been on a bit of a high with a demonstration, then yeah, it really makes you hungry because of that energy but needing to be replaced. So you're tempted to replace your psychic energy with food. And some people will ground by smoking or drinking coffee, for example. They'll want to ground afterwards. So I noticed a lot of the mediums were putting on weight or getting ill. Exactly that, not looking after themselves. And it is a hazard. I was always told it's a hazard of the job that your health can, but we still do it.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's like if that's your passion, it's like being a boxer and being said, well, you might get your nose broken. Well, if you don't want your nose broken, you're not. You know, it's the hazard of the job, isn't it? You kind of go, well, but certainly if I've not raised my vibration, I will get tired. There's that old saying, isn't there? You can't pour from the empty jug. You know, you're giving to other people all of the time. And sometimes you do need to just rest and have a day where you say, well, I'm getting a bit tired now. Yeah, certainly I do feel if I've been working a late night the next day, I'm absolutely zonked. But yeah, I don't let it stop me. It's
So,
terrible.
so you teach tarot. Do you teach mediumship and psychic work as well?
I don't teach mediumship because I don't personally feel I know enough about it to answer other people's questions, because I've still got questions of my own. And I think once I've found the answer to those questions, and part of my questions is what my clients ask me. I've got some regulars who maybe they've lost someone really close and they're checking in every couple of weeks or every couple of months. And some mediums discourage that. They say, no, no, no. I say, why not? Because you'd ring your mum every week, wouldn't you? Why would you not want to connect with your loved ones? You know, people will say, I talk to them every day. You know, talk to your guides every day. Why not? Why is there a quote, you know, a ration on it? That's one of my questions to other mediums, maybe. So yeah, and part of my questions with the one of my lovely clients who has a reading probably every 6 weeks, and it is channeling his loved ones. He had the misfortune of losing the two closest people to him in a short space of time. And through channeling with them, he's asked questions, he's pushed me to develop that mediumship skill. And he'll ask me questions, well, what are they doing up there? Which nobody else asks. Everyone else is like, are they okay? Are they happy?
Yeah.
But he's like, well, what are they doing? And I'm like, yeah, what are they doing up there? You know, what are you doing? Tell me. So I've then gone into it and said, well, you know, could you tell us what you've been doing? And when I was I'm in development groups myself, you know, which I really enjoy. One's in person on a Monday night. I go to a local spiritualist church for that. Never thought I'd ever step foot in a spiritualist church, but there we go. And one's online. And I ask these questions. Well, what, you know, is it okay to ask, you know, all these questions? So if I was to teach mediumship, I think I would be unprepared. I'd probably have to refer them on to somebody else. Yes, I teach tarot. Psychic development, yes, I do teach, because I'm very hot, as I said about the car. You know, if I was teaching you to drive, I wouldn't just give you the keys and say, get on with it. I'll wait for you to come back. I'm very protective of people. I'm very passionate about what I do. And I would want everyone to do psychic work safely, and I would want them to enjoy it. And I've been in classes where safety hasn't been the priority. And particularly with mediumship, I've been in classes where people were encouraged to connect with spirit, any spirit,
Oh,
didn't matter. Yeah. And as a
oh,
paranormal investigator, you will understand, out of all people, that not all spirits are lovely. You
no.
know? Yes, thank you for saying that. If you go to certain schools of thought and certain disciplines, they will tell you that all spirit is from the light. I beg to
Oh,
differ,
dear.
because
Okay.
some of the experiences I had as a young child would tell me otherwise. And it's like saying, go into the nightclub, everyone's lovely. Well, you've got people spiking drinks and all sorts in the nightclub. You've got a bouncer at the nightclub to stop that happening. So when I teach psychic development, I teach you to work with what we call a gatekeeper, which is like your bouncer at your nightclub. He's going to stop the undesirables coming in. So that's your first step. You wouldn't open your front door and say, everyone come to mine. You might do it when you're at school, but you learn fast. You go, that was a bad idea. You know, I've got no house left, and they drank all my drink and they stole my furniture. You wouldn't do
Yeah.
it. So in psychic work, the first thing you do is find a good teacher who's going to show you to find your gatekeeper, work with your guides, work with a good intention to make sure that you're in control. You know where the brake is, that not somebody else. When you first learn to drive a car, you've got the instructor with you with the dual pedals, and he can slam on, or he or she, they them can slam on the brakes if you're not observant enough, for example. And then eventually you're able to do it yourself. So psychic work, a bit like that. Your teacher will say, hang on a minute, we'll pull that back. You're not ready for that yet. I've seen people come out of badly managed development groups flying high as a kite because they're loving the energy of connecting with spirit. And it is a euphoria because you're going into an altered state of consciousness, and it's lovely, and it can be quite addictive. And then you've got people not coming out of that and not grounding and going out and walking straight into lampposts because they're not aware that they're back in the physical world. And then you've had people who want to push it, who say, I was up meditating all night and I lost all track of time and I was meditating for 13 hours. And you say, well, that's not really the way we do it. You know?
No.
And you might learn, you might be somebody who learns the hard way, you know, and probably I was a bit like that myself, because when you're young, you don't want anyone to tell you what to do, you know. And I think for me, I did warn you I talk a lot, so, you know, feel free to interrupt me. For me, at 19, maybe 20, early 20s, which, I mean, I've got a son who's 24 and I look at him and I think, oh gosh, you're very young. So around his age, I was going out working in psychic fairs. I was working in a place in London where Joe Public was coming in, and nobody had taught me protection. Although I was very lucky, I met a mentor, you know, who, when things did happen, then said, I think you need to put on your suit of armor, Gail, you know. Yeah. And it wasn't until I thought I was just a tarot reader. So I was just reading tarot for people. And at that young age, I had very limited life experience. I didn't know why they wanted to connect with their deceased grandmother, because I didn't have a good relationship with my grandmother. So I was like, what do you want to do that for? You know, I couldn't understand it. I was like, what? Why? And it wasn't until I lost someone very close that I was like, now I get it. Now I understand why. But I was just reading tarot and thinking that was it. You know, I was just reading the cards and telling you what the cards said, and off you go. And it wasn't until one person, when they left, I could feel a pulling on what I now know to be my solar plexus. But at the time, I didn't know what that was. So I was like, why is there a funny feeling around my belly button? What is that about? And it was her just pulling the energy out of me because she wanted to know more and more. So I had to learn the hard way. And it probably sounds like a contradiction to say, I suppose it's like, look, I've made these mistakes so you don't have to. But I wouldn't recommend people learn the way I learn. You know, go and find a good teacher who can guide you through it, you know.
Well, yeah, especially when you end up working in a very public place, in a place where people maybe are showing up a little bit more wounded, or have maybe a little bit more baggage, and they need to process that. That's like really hard energy. And one thing that a lot of psychic mediums do come in contact with, which if you're not a psychic medium, you can still come in contact with this, is when you make a connection and someone is really hurting, they tend to like attach to you in a very energetic way. And that It can be the draining. It doesn't need to be at the solar plexus. You can feel it in different parts of your body. Yeah. But not only can it zap your energy, but you're going to have intrusive thoughts. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the clues, especially if you're working in a psychic medium realm, is all of a sudden you're having thoughts. Maybe you're a little bit down and you weren't down before, things that are just not you. Yeah. If you don't know how to protect yourself, if you don't know how to clear yourself, if you don't know how to make proper boundaries, you end up with other people's stuff. And sometimes it can feel like other people's thoughts, and that can be damaging on a day-to-day basis.
100%, Yolanta, 100. I think there's been times where I used to have people in my house, and not anymore, because again, naivety. No, exactly, naivety, and also needs must. You know, if you don't have a dedicated space. I mean, in an ideal world, we have our little dedicated space in a separate place somewhere, and it's lovely. But I was always a kind of hit the ground running kind of person where I've read tarot on the cross-channel ferry, I've done in cafes, in bar, and I still do. But I at least do my protection prayers now, which I never used to. And certainly, you're absolutely right. You do become depleted. You do take on other people's stuff. I found when I was that young 20-something-year-old, and I was working in my first spiritual place in London, I found I was cycling home and I was still worrying about people. Did I tell them the right thing? You know, are they going to be okay? And I realized I had to detach because I was taking all this stuff home. And sometimes you can get entity attachment. So people will be carrying stuff with them that can transfer to you. Now, because you're a paranormal podcast, I'm happy to share an experience with you when that first happened.
Absolutely, because after this, I was going to ask you about your haunted house you grew up in. So,
well, let me tell you. Okay, so when I was I met my first mentor when I was 19, 20. I was a punk rocker. I can't remember. I've had my hair all colours. You know, at the moment you probably won't see me on air, but my hair's brown at the moment. It's my natural colour. So I just wanted to remember what colour it actually is. But so I had a unit in a place called Oddities Market in Camden in London, quite a well-known area of London. And I was sewing. My passion is sewing. I've always thought I was going to become a dressmaker, and that is my hobby. And so I was making children's wear, and I was doing jewellery and all sorts of weird things in this indoor market. And next to me was my mentor friend Bill, who classed himself as a witch, and I'd never met a real witch before. I was like, wow, I'd grown up as Roman Catholic, so I was like, wow, this is really fascinating,
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me such a lot of good advice. He really did. He really took me under his wing. He's still one of my best friends now. This is maybe 40 to 50 years later, and I'd been living in a place in Hackney in London, and I'd had a boyfriend who said that there was a haunting in his house, that there was a spirit, which he didn't really tell me a lot about at the time. And he came to visit me, and then he left early in the morning. But I felt this spirit. Long story short, because obviously we haven't got all day, this spirit entered me. I shook it off, or so I thought. I went to the unit that I was working in, the Oddities Market, and I thought the entity had gone. I thought it had gone from me. Yeah. But it was lurking by me. And somebody came to my unit and picked it up. And I'd said to my friend Bill, look, last night this happened. And he was going, don't be so ridiculous, Gail. He's a witch and a psychic. He's telling me not to be ridiculous. I'm like, I'm not making it up. Anyway, this lady he knew stood by my unit, and it jumped onto her. And then she said to him exactly the same description I gave him. And then he believed me and he helped remove it, thankfully. But that is an indication of entity attachment and entity transference, you know. And these days, I work to stop that happening. I use protection prayers. I wear an amethyst necklace, which I've got on now. I sleep in my amethyst necklace, which is something the guide said to me. The guide said, wear amethyst, Gail. I work with Australian bushflower remedies. I use something called a space clearing spray. I also make a meditation essence so that I'm protected and grounded. And I make a lot of those sprays and essences for other people. I would protect myself from attachments and so forth. So those are my different little ways. I would spray the house if I felt something was there. And very much what you said, you know, I've had times where I've become very depressed and then I've said, hang on, I was all right a minute ago. Where's this come from? If I can't shake it off myself, I go to see a healer. And I've got an amazing healer friend called Helen. She's absolutely lovely. And I'm constantly giving her phone number out. But she, you know, it's reciprocated. If someone goes to her and she thinks they need a reading, she'll send them over to me. But she works with the angelic realm and she works with Akashic records and things like that. She's got skills I haven't got. And in fact, we're in a trance group together. You know, we do exploring trance together. And she'll do something called soul clearing if something's attached, and she'll do a whole report, like a 7-page report, and she'll say, this is what's coming, that's coming. And she's one of those people that nothing phases her. If you said, I had 17 goblins in my kitchen last night, she would believe you. She'd say, okay, let's get rid of those 17 goblins. Do they really need to be there? You know, she wouldn't say you've got mental health problems, you know, unless she did think you had them, then she'd say maybe you need to see a psychiatrist.
Yep.
You know, she should say, well, okay, the goblins represent this, and you know, this is what you need to do. She's really helped me over the years, and so I think if you feel you've got something that is bigger than you that you can't deal with, don't be too proud, you know, because no matter how accomplished we think we are, you know, we don't know everything. And find somebody who has the skills to help you. It's like we get a bit of a cold, we'll go and take some, you know, some tablets or some powders to get rid of that cold. But if it's really got a hold of us and it's developing into pneumonia, we've got to see the doctor. We might have to go to hospital. We can't handle everything ourselves. So we need a team of support workers, people who understand us, who get it. And when I first came into this work, as I'm sure many people listening will relate to, it's a very solitary world. It's not the kind of thing you talk about at the pub, really, or the dinner table. And these days, to find like-minded people, hang on to them. You know, if you find your tribe, hang on to that tribe, look after your tribe, because you're going to need each other, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. And I personally, I also have my go-to person when I feel something a little bit funky, and I've definitely had it to the point where people noticed. People around me were, you know what, there's something wrong with you. I can't put my finger on it. And nothing I did was something, I couldn't do anything to make myself feel better. And I actually was avoiding making the phone call to book an appointment to get it cleared. Everything was coming up to avoid it, which again, huge sign that energetically there was something attached. But Gail.
Yes.
I really want to hear a little bit more about these opening and closing doors in your childhood home. I've had strange things happen in my childhood home, but I can't say that it was nearly as exciting as what you described as normal.
I don't think it's exciting. Because people go, "Oh, write a book about all your experiences," and then I sit at I was going to say typewriter and show my rage, but the computer, the keyboard, and I go, oh, I can't think of anything, you know. And then exactly that. It's probably not everyone's grown up with it, so it's probably not normal, is it? I mean, growing up, I had in one house I lived in. We moved a few times as kids, and in fact, we did live in Toronto very briefly. I don't really remember Toronto, but I was saying before the program started to Yolanta that I'd love to go and visit sometime, just to see what who I could have been. But anyway, we lived one place we lived in southwest London, and I was aware of these three shadows by my bed, and I was about 5 years old. I had no idea, 4 or 5 years old. I had no idea what they were, and because this line of work is, it's not. But when people say, I get it, they'll go, "You're a tarot reader," and they'll give me their palm, so they don't know the difference between a tarot reader and a
Yep.
palmist. So those things, and the same in psychic world in general, they'll think you're a medium because you read cards or palms. Have you got? I used to do tarot readings. People go, "Have I got any spirits around me?" I go, "I don't know. Have you?" Because I wasn't tuned in to at that point to see them. But so I didn't really know what these spirits were, and it took a very long time, not until around my 50s, to find out what they could possibly be. I've got a rough idea now. A lovely friend of mine was doing me a reading. We'd actually been working together on a psychic event. We'd come home back to mine. She lives in Brighton, so she stayed the night with me. And we got chatting, and then she started to channel somebody we both knew, and I got some answers to some of this stuff. So I understand that some people may call them greys. I don't know if you're aware of something called greys.
Like aliens?
Well, there is greys as aliens, but there's also greys or shadow people. Beg your
Shadow
pardon.
people.
Maybe,
Okay.
yeah, does
Yep.
that make more sense? Okay,
Yes.
sorry, wrong word. That could be misleading, couldn't it? The aliens come and see me. Maybe I did. But
Maybe.
yeah, I had a very vivid imagination when I was a kid because I had actually been on medication. I had tuberculosis at 4 years old, and I was on a lot of medication. So I wasn't sure if it was hallucinations from the medications. I certainly did have hallucinations, but I also think it opened my mind up. Probably like with people on LSD, you go somewhere, when you're not on the right medication or you're on strong medication, you go somewhere. Whether that place actually exists or not, it certainly exists in your mind. But they were very real to me, these shadow people, and it wasn't until I started reading references to shadow people. I was like, oh, this actually exists. This is actually a thing. Nobody else saw them in my family.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'd call my mum in. There's people in my room. How can there be people in your room, Gail? The door's locked. So it was a very strange time when there wasn't anyone to explain it to me. And then we moved. My dad, God rest his soul, my dad, or goddess, or whoever you believe in, was very interested in paranormal stuff. And my dad's side of the family, they all did Ouija boards. They all did. They were very interested in. My
Oh,
aunts were all into tea leaf reading and stuff like that. Nobody did it professionally. Nobody really did it as a hobby either, other than the Ouija. And they would do it the old way, was with an upturned wine glass. That was the old way of doing it, an upturned wine glass on a polished table with scraps of paper with the alphabet on. There was none of this fancy spirit board stuff. It was all very DIY. And the funny thing, growing up in a British Roman Catholic family, this was going on in the evenings, as a pastime. Don't tell the priest. But so my dad and my aunt were very into the Ouija, and of course, as I got to learn more about the psychic world and paranormal stuff, I was like, Dad, you sure you know what you're doing? He was doing it after drinking copious amounts of alcohol, which you're not meant to do.
Oh
And
my.
then, of course, really, he was opening portals. That was what he was doing. And I was growing up with the visitors of those portals without really knowing what was going on. So, that I was very aware of spirits around the house. When I went up the stairs, I was always hesitant to go up the stairs. I would put the light on. I wouldn't, because the light seemed to dissipate whatever was there, thankfully. There was always something lingering outside his bedroom. I didn't like it. So I was very reluctant to open up as a medium because of those experiences, because I just thought it was scary. I thought I would get possessed, then, or worse, So the door opening and closing, that happened on a regular basis, but everyone was very nonchalant about it. It was very, come on in. And my dad's side of the family, French. My granddad was French, so my mum liked the idea that she'd married a guy, an exotic man, and so the door would open. She'd go, "Entree, come on in," and so she would tell it to enter, which now I know like you don't do that, and you could sense the spirit coming into the living room, walking around and then leaving, and quite often that happened, and then the door would shut afterwards. And then I just remember one occasion sat next to my mum, and the door's open, entree, she said, and again the spirits walked around. We couldn't see it, neither of us could actually see the spirit, but we were aware of it, we could feel it. And then when nobody was interacting with it, it just slammed the door, so the doors would just slam. And we had a lot of stuff like that. That's it's a bit bonkers, really. So yeah, that was our spirits in our house. But we had the house where there was the shadow people. I think my dad was aware that there was something there, and I kept bursting into tears. I didn't like it. I was very tiny, 4 or 5 years old, very tiny. And I said, I wanted to move. I didn't like this house anymore. And my dad, it transpired that when he was looking after us and my mum was out, he could hear creaking floorboards as if somebody was walking around. And he checked I remember him taking up the carpets and checking every single floorboard in that house, and none of them creaked. But come the evening, the floorboards were creaking. And we moved soon after that. But the house I'm in now was an interesting house. I actually got the house I'm in really cheaply, probably because there was stuff going on. And I've cleared it a lot, and everyone who comes here now, they say, "Oh, it's a lovely energy," and I'm like, "Good," it's I've used a lot of incenses and smudging and space clearing sprays and crystals, and I love flowers. I love to have flowers around me. That the flowers really will lift an energy, lift the vibration. If you're feeling a bit down, just buy yourself some flowers. If I have the money, I'll buy you flowers. Get some flowers around you. And I've actually, my herbalist friend, she says she doesn't trust people who don't have flowers in their house. She doesn't trust people if they've not got a garden or a plant or something. She says, yeah, she only likes plant people. Luckily, I'm a plant person. Get some flowers and plants around you. But yeah, this house, there was, in my bedroom, a lot of running across the ceiling. I could hear like child's footsteps running up and down the ceiling. And when my son was quite young, probably again, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, this was happening regularly. And I thought it was the neighbour's kid. And it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I'm thinking, what's he doing? He's got school tomorrow. What's he doing running up and down? What's he doing? How's he making that noise? And then the neighbour, we chatted, and she said the same to me. She said, well, I thought it was your son. And I was like, no, he's in bed. And she said, well, so's mine. And I'm like, well, who's running up and down? And then one day I was in the bath and my son's dad was downstairs and we could hear what sounded like, do you know what a medicine ball is? Have you heard of a medicine? It's a bit like a basketball, but it's really heavy. Must know what a
Okay.
basketball is. So when you drop a medicine ball, it'll thud. It's really heavy. So it'll go thud, thud, thud. You know, not like a basketball go bump, 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 wouldn't it? I should have worked for the BBC sound effects. We can see why I didn't work for the BBC fire sound effects. So I was sitting in the bath, and then suddenly I could hear this bump, 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 you know, and I was like, "Whoa, where's that come from?" And it was as if it was outside the bathroom door. And
No,
downstairs, you know, my son's dad was sat there, and he heard it, you know, so we both heard it. Anyway, lots of clearing, you know, it's all gone. But fast forward to my current partner, who's moved in with me this year. When I first met him, and we've been together 9 years now, his dad had I knew his dad. We'd known each other 30 odd years ago. I knew his dad. And when we were sitting in the living room together, there was knocking. There was knocking on the walls.
oh my
And
goodness.
I was like, can you hear that? He said, yeah. I said, I think that's your dad. And I said, do you want me to tune in? And he said, no. So I didn't. You know, I respected his wishes, but that would happen quite a lot. And very often I do get that little knocks and bangs when spirits around. Sometimes I read in my garden cabin now. I don't have people in the house, but occasionally I'll hear a little click around the room where I say, well, and the way I look at it is because I've done my prayers and my protection, that it's come from the light, that it's an acknowledgement that somebody's there for somebody. You know, I don't get freaked out by it anymore.
That, you know what, and that's for happening during a reading, that's some beautiful physical validation
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that I think some people can handle. I don't think very many people can handle too much clicking and banging as
Yeah.
validation.
I know. I think, yeah, sometimes people, they're like staring at you when they're kind of new to a reading because it's like they don't know what you're going to do or say.
Yeah.
And the first thing I do is try and put people at ease and just say, look, you know, nothing weird's going to happen. The standard thing is, which I probably stole off of a friend of mine when we were doing mediumship demonstrations together, and we'd address the audience and we'll say, look, they're nothing out of the ordinary. You're not going to see the spirits. We will, unless you're incredibly gifted, in which case we'll give you a job, you know. So we'll do the work. You just sit and enjoy it. And the standard thing, I think my friend Jeff says this, my lovely friend Jeff, is my head's not going to spin round. Pea soup's not going to come out my mouth. But if it does, call an ambulance because that's not normal. So we try and lighten the mood with it. Yeah. But so you're right. Some people do want that. And that's why you get people going to, what do they call it when you go to a paranormal investigation, but a haunted night, you know,
Yes.
there's a name for it, isn't it? A ghost hunt, that's the word. People like to go on ghost hunts. And I had a client who, I think some people who really want their loved ones to come through hope they will actually physically manifest there, which is a really hard thing for a spirit to do. It takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And I've had people sit there with me waiting for some kind of evidence, as in the chair's going to fly across the room or something like that. And again, it's very rare to have that kind of thing. And one lady, she'd come regularly connecting to her son, and her son would come through. He was a lovely guy, you know, her son, you know, won't go into the personal details of it, but he was a lovely guy, and he was very cooperative as a spirit to chat and give information to his mum. She actually took notes. She was going to write a book with all of the transcripts that he'd given her. And then one day we had the cup and saucer on the table. Not that I drink out of cups and saucers because I'm not posh, but the cup and saucer started rattling. And she was like, over the moon. And, it's like, my son's here. I've been sitting here talking to your son for months. But now because the cup and saucer's rattled, now you believe it, So it is a funny thing, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. Okay, Gail, I have loved chatting. I'd love for you to come back and tell us more, all sorts of these stories. Again, I want our listeners to understand, where can they find you, either for a reading, or if they want to learn how they can do tarot like a star. How can people find you?
Thank you. I am international, thanks to the World Wide Web, which is an amazing tool. We were talking about that earlier. So my website is www.gail, G-A-I-L-H-A-R-T, gailhart.co.uk. You can book a reading. If you're not in my local area, then you can book via Zoom and have the reading recorded. I can do WhatsApp, or you can come in person if you're willing to take a trip. And the course Read Tarot Like a Star will be going live very shortly. So if you click on the link it's a downloadable tarot course. If you're not able to get it live just yet, give it another week and it will be live, or email me and I'll let you know when. So you can download that course no matter where you are in the world. And it's a 6-week tarot, or 6 session, because, if you don't have to do it every week, you could do it every day for 6 weeks. I would recommend some breathing space between each module, because you need to digest it. So that is coming soon.
Amazing. And thank you so much for being on the Haunting Live podcast today, Gail.
I really enjoyed it. I'm more than happy to come back. And as I say, I talk for England. The funny thing is, would you believe, when I was a little girl, I was very shy and I wouldn't talk. So I made up for lost time.
That tracks. That, you had to get over that in your lifetime, and
yeah,
it's over.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I want to interview you about what you get up to and your experiences. So maybe next time we can chat more and find out more about what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Gail.
All right. You take care. Bye.
Miss one of our episodes? Replay our episodes on Rhode Island Broadcasting. Show your support for Haunting Live by supporting our broadcast partner, Rhode Island Broadcasting. Find them on YouTube.